You know, it was a few years ago that a friend of the Viola Barrios family sent me an article from a San Antonio newspaper, and it was about the funeral of Viola Barrios. And Viola had started a restaurant there in San Antonio. She was 76 years old, and she had been murdered in her home. And it was quickly discovered that it was a young man, at least he was the one, this article, who was believed to have been the murderer, Joe Estrada Jr. Well, the children of Viola Barrios offered to pay the legal fees for this young man because they knew the parents were not wealthy people, that they could not afford the legal fees for their son. They offered to pay those legal fees. And there in the pew at their mother's funeral were the parents of the accused man who had murdered their mother. And there's a picture here in the paper of the family, the Barrios family, embracing the Estrada family. And one of the comments says here, Viola Barrios' grandchildren released balloons during her funeral services outside at the San Fernando Cemetery. Forgiveness and the celebration of Barrios' life were the recurrent themes of that service. Archbishop Jose Gomez was the Mass celebrant. And here's what the Barrios family said. The Barrios family, in their decision to pay the legal fees for this young man, the Barrios family lost our mother. The Estrada family lost their son. We need each other. We're united. We forgive him. What a great model of forgiveness for us in our own culture today, where there's often the seeking of revenge or trying to pay back past hurts, people doing, as we unfortunately saw here in southern Alabama, going out and randomly killing so many people and then killing oneself in an act of rage and anger. You see, revenge and unforgiveness is a poison that we take hoping to harm the other. And it only ends up destroying oneself. It's our Lord who teaches us how to forgive. He is the master, and he tells us that this is not an option. The very Lord, the prayer that he taught us, has that in the daily prayer that we are to pray, the Our Father. Forgive us our trespasses as we have forgiven. I think it is literally translated, forgive us our trespasses as we have forgiven those who trespass against us. Have you forgiven everyone who has hurt you? The season of Lent is a season for us to look at any past grudges or resentments, desire for revenge that may be still lurking in our hearts, and to bring that to the cross with Jesus, and to just say, Jesus, I want to say with you, Father, forgive them. They didn't know what they were doing. Help me to forgive. Give them the graces that they need to change in the ways that they need to change, and give me the grace to have a heart like yours, that hurt can be turned into compassion, that injury into intercession for the very people who have hurt me. And here's one other point that we need to remember. We ourselves have inflicted hurt on others, sometimes unknowingly, sometimes knowingly. And if we look honestly at our past, we will see that all of us have been guilty of this in one way or another. We want forgiveness too. And we should pray for those people that we have hurt in our life, knowingly again or unknowingly, that they would have the grace to forgive us. that the hurt that we caused them would be turned into compassion. The injury that we inflicted upon them would be even turned into prayers for us. It is a sobering thought to remember that we too need forgiveness. Now, I'd be remiss if on this day I didn't mention something about St. Patrick, because here in the Diocese of Birmingham, Alabama, we have benefited from the service of so many missionaries that came from Ireland to serve here in this missionary diocese. And we could say, too, that St. Patrick was one who learned how to forgive. At the age of 16, he was taken by Irish pirates to Ireland. And for 6 years, he served his slave master there, tending the flocks. But he says that it was at this time that he really learned to pray. He wrote his confessions later on in life, and we learn much about St. Patrick from his confessions. And he wrote this about this time of captivity as a slave. He said, "Now, after I came to Ireland, tending the flocks was my daily occupation, and constantly I used to pray in the daytime. Love of God and fear of him increased more and more, and faith grew and the Spirit moved, so that in one day I would say as many as 100 prayers, and at night nearly as many, so that I used to stay even in the woods and on the mountain to this end. And before daybreak I used to be roused to prayer in snow and frost and rain, and I felt no hurt, nor was there any sluggishness in me as I now see, because the Spirit was then fervent in me." And here's something where you can see how God would take something that on the natural level was a terrible thing to happen, to be taken into slavery, but God turned it to his spiritual benefit. And that's what we could say about any wounds or injuries that we've suffered, any injustice that we've suffered in our life, that God will take that if we bring it to him, and he will turn it to our spiritual benefit, to make our hearts more like his own, to draw us into his heart and his spirit. After 6 years, he escaped, planning never to return again. But it had been during that time that he had learned the Celtic language, the language of the people. And he later had a dream where the Irish were saying to him, come back to us." And he understood that this was part of God's plan, and he studied for the priesthood, was ordained a priest, and eventually a bishop at the age of 43, was consecrated a bishop, and was sent back to Ireland. He had to learn how to forgive, and to move beyond that now, to will the good of those who had been his captors, to want to bring the good news of Jesus Christ to them. And so he traveled the country extensively, making numerous converts, though at times being opposed by the local kings and druids, who were the pagan religious leaders at the time, who often advised the kings. Many times his life was in danger, and yet with God's help, his faith grew. One of the things that the choir will be singing today is the breastplate of St. Patrick. And it's a well-known hymn that we sing. But it was something that he prayed when he was in danger in Ireland, and words in which I now conclude. Christ beside me, Christ before me, Christ behind me, Christ within me, Christ under me, Christ over me, Christ to the right of me, Christ to the left of me, Christ in lying down, Christ in sitting, Christ in rising up, Christ in the heart of every person who may think of me, Christ in the mouth of every person who may speak of me, Christ in every eye that may look on me, Christ in every ear that may hear me. We now